Howdy.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing wonderfully. Let me get you set up on my screen here. It's been a
Like, do I,
while.
I, I'd like, I mean, the profile's nice. The profile's good, but, I'd rather see your face.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I drew the profile image myself. So really, you're not seeing my face when you look at it. You're seeing my soul.
That's what dogs see.
Your soul when they look at you?
Yes. I think dogs see right through. That's what I think. I think if you ever come across somebody that a dog just is really doesn't like, stay away. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think yeah. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that
They have some
view of the
very good
world.
instincts about human nature and see things like aura, like kind of like,
I can tell
yeah,
with when earthquakes are coming too, you know? They have
yeah.
that extra sense.
They're just sensitive. I
And
mean, I
very
know
cute.
you're a cat guy. I know you're a cat guy.
Yeah, well, they have their own asshole aura, you know?
Well, they allow you to love them. Like they're just I have a very, very healthy respect for the feline. I really do. I think I respect them greatly. I don't think that they're meant to be owned by us and they're not pack animals like dogs, but like I definitely like a cute cat, like I don't think I could share my house with one.
Oh, I love them. You know, because all the cats that I'd ever met my whole life, are standoffish assholes. But the cats that I have are just desperately loving. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can barely take two steps without them charging headlong into your leg, to tackle you. So I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. I'm good
Yeah,
for it.
no, there are sweet cats. There are sweet cats. I just think that sometimes you could adopt a kitten and you don't kind of know what you're going to get.
Oh yeah, for sure, right? I mean, hey, that's like having kids. Sometimes you have a kid and they're an asshole. It's hard out there.
I have one.
Oh, well, there you go. See, you would know. I'm
He's
I'm telling
he's
you.
go, he's going through his Ayn Rand phase right now, so I'm trying to deal with that shit.
Oh, I went through that phase. Yeah, that's bad. I'm sorry for a person who did that to a person getting that. I'm really sorry.
But I do think he'll come out the other end okay. I have to believe that I've put out the right message and the right, vibe to him his whole life that he'll eventually come back around.
Yeah, it's very attractive when you're a young guy, I think, because my parents are, like pretty liberal. But I think, at a certain point, that it's like a brainworm that tells you, if only I was in charge of absolutely everything on Earth, everything would be good, and that just inexorably sends you off to, yeah, to being the whole Ayn Rand school, I think.
Yeah. I'd also argue that our brains are not fully developed until our mid 20s and he's only 21. So, I think that we get smarter, wiser, have more life experiences, meet people in more desperate situations, come out of our little sheltered bubble and hopefully grow.
No, I fully agree with your assertion that right libertarianism is caused by underdeveloped brain tissue. I'm fully on board with that. I couldn't agree more. Uh,
But yeah, I'm talking about like children where you're talking about just anybody.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely anyone. Maybe it's because you're young. Maybe it was a head injury. I have no idea. But I've talked with enough of those types to feel like that might be the common thread.
So what's your topic? Are we talking insurrection?
Oh yeah, well it's well, first of all, happy anniversary of the day that uh a very funny, a very funny, Karen protest happened.
How do you
Um,
feel about that? How do you categorize that? Like if you were going to write about this in a history book, let's say, like, and 100 years down the road, there would be like this recount of what that was. Like, how would you? And I mean, not humorously, but like, how would you describe that?
yeah, the issue here is that any recounting of the events which does not explain how funny it is an inaccurate recounting. It is objectively hilarious, but it's also really serious. Those are not mutually exclusive at all. Yeah, if you look at the history, for example, of Nazi Germany, right? I mean, the most severe fascist regime people know and study about. You actually look at the events that took place. It was a clown show 24/7. Like, if you can imagine, like, watching that, sort of like as a temporally displaced ghost, it's a constant laugh riot. And what's happening now, I mean, it is very funny, but, at the same time, it's kind of like, there's an analogy that I just used like a bit ago for a segment, but it's very unserious and serious at the same time. It's like having a crazy stalker, who tries to kill you, one day, like you're out in Starbucks, and they like throw a steak knife at you, You turn around, it missed, of course, and they're running away. And like a thrown steak knife can't kill you. Like it just can't. It's like 2 ounces. It maybe pricks the back of your head. It's not going to kill you, but it's still kind of concerning, right? I mean, because maybe next time they bring a gun, and that's much less funny. That's how I feel about it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen such a range. There's such a range of opinions about it. I feel like there are people, what it is to me is it's a sign of a very depressed, sad, and desperate populace that is like in the death throes of capitalism and can't seem to find its way out of its mess. And the people that are so unhappy will cling to a leader, any leader that is sort of looking like they're sticking it to the man that they view as what the cause of their woes. And Trump always appealed to that very anti-establishment base of he's not an insider and he says it like it is.
He's a maverick, yeah. Everyone else hates him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And people that are desperate cling to that stuff because they want an answer and they want someone to help them. And that's how you end up in these sort of like authoritarian places. It's usually by choice of the people that it eventually gets there. It's kind of like, I mean, you don't see it coming until you're in it. Well, I mean, some of us do. Some of us see that. But so I think January 6th, there were parts of it that were ridiculous. And the fact that those buffoons, the vast majority of them were buffoons. There were probably some very non-buffoon people in there, but anybody taking selfies while walking out with the podium and just, they were making a mockery of their own thing enough that it just struck me as kind of like laughable. But yet there were people very scared and people got killed. And so it's not acceptable. You know what I mean? Just because they were morons. Like class clowns can actually cause damage.
Yeah, and well, you say, that they were the goofballs, but you're right, there were people involved there who weren't goofballs, For every 100 idiots who were taking selfies inside the Capitol, there was a real ready operative, whether they're in government or not, who's thinking, okay, maybe this time didn't work out. But next time, yeah. I know how this hallway, I know this, I know that. Next time we'll get them. And I mean, that's always how it works, right? Any kind of populist uprising, manufactured or otherwise, is going to have, a bunch of really angry goofballs like piling out of the clown car, and a couple of people who are, really terrifying. And those people's names never get published. Those are just the people who actually work to, it's kind of like your campaign base operations. You get like 100 voters, but for every like 10,000 voters, you have like 2 or 3 people in that state who get work done. But this is kind of like the clandestine populist pseudo uprising version of that. And I think these people do want, the people who actually did storm the Capitol, I think they really do want something to cling on to. It's just so sad that like this is the revolutionary cause they're giving their lives for. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like how you know what I mean? It's like when you go online and you see people who are talking about how they're ready to like go storm like a police station at the outrage of them having been circumcised as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, or like those people who are like live or die, like, yeah, COVID vaccines. No, I would rather fucking suicide bomb a post office. Right. It's like, I understand where your antagonism is present, but oh my God, like there are so many better ways to handle it.
What I think we didn't pay enough attention to and didn't get enough of our like sort of ire were Congress people that were in some way or another affiliated with this. I believe, was it Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or one of them that was giving tours and taking people. And there was like a brief mention of it. There was like, I remember a little bit a news story about, oh, well, a couple of the people that were there had been on her tour. Like, and it bothers me that we don't look into that. Like the
they
people
were calling
on the outside
beforehand. They were talking. They were like who was it? Gassar, who said, "We'll protect you if anything happens." They knew.
So see, that's the problem with this whole thing is for me that we shouldn't allow people to be in our government that are working against our government. Like, I think that's just inherently a bad plan.
I completely agree. Yeah, because what they did was the definition of sedition.
Yes.
Literally, like concrete, right there, exactly. And I think if the Democratic Party was even a quarter the way competent, I mean, if they even had like a single vertebra somewhere in their body, like this should have been the end of the Republican Party. The first attack on the Capitol in over a century, since the Civil War, orchestrated by people on essentially the orders of the Republican frontrunner in tandem with the legislative officials from their party, which led to multiple deaths. In any sane country, this would be like the tombstone of the Republican Party. Like, rest in peace. Yep, they overplayed their hand. They didn't have the cards. They're done now. And then the Democrats could just enjoy 30 consecutive years of like single party rule, which I'm not saying is a good thing. I'm just saying if they were competent, they would be able to pull that off.
That has its own problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Obama had a supermajority and we couldn't even really get health care. So like when they keep saying that the answer is just to vote for more Democrats, I think it really depends on which Democrats, and they're not all the same. So we obviously promote, you have to elect non-corporate people. If somebody that you're electing is on the corporate special interest take, that's their priority. And that's both parties. That's the problem. So the reason that the Democrats, it doesn't matter that the Republicans are in office, is it still suits them. They're not wanting to do anything. If Joe Biden wanted to push this agenda, it would have been done. Joe Manchin or nada, it wouldn't have mattered. If the president of the United States wanted to get this done, it would get done. And it doesn't. And it's because they don't really want to.
It should, like, can you, if the opposite had happened, if like 5,000 Antifa super soldiers had stormed the Capitol under the orders of Joe Biden, and Trump was president or something, it doesn't matter if they wouldn't have had a majority, there would have been Antifa super soldiers swinging from lampposts all across the greater DC area for months after that. I mean, there would have been a fucking pogrom. They would have just culled a significant portion of the population. They were talking about, what was it? Sedition charges with Attorney General Barr for BLM protesters. If you have these people considering, flipping through the books on sedition charges for fucking protesters, and then it's like, oh, here's an attack on the Capitol, Yeah,
no, we don't care. If it had been BLM protesters, they wouldn't have gotten past the steps. They would have just been dead. If that group were black, they would have. This entire thing would be a completely different discussion.
Oh, they would have been liquidated. They would have just annihilated on the steps. Oh, yeah. And it's the Capitol building. If there's any time I think you can legitimately justify, sort of touchy police responses, I think defending the Capitol building would be. But now I'm not condemning the Capitol Police, because they got inside the building. I know there were logistical concerns there, understaffed, whatever. But those concerns would not have been a concern, as you say, if the Republicans were in charge. Okay, they would have said, "Hey, how many people are out there? 5,000. We've got 15,000 bullets. That's fine. We can. Yeah. That math adds up. Go for it. Yeah, go crazy. Who cares?"
Right. Yeah. And the reality is nobody did have guns at that. And I think that you could look at it, well, okay, next time they could, there is that possibility, but it's one of those things where you're trying to make something seem infinitely more serious for political purposes, but yet you're not going after the real people that should be gone after, which are the people on the inside that were part of that and supported it. And I wouldn't be entirely sure that didn't have something to do with the staffing of the Capitol Police. I don't know any of that, who knows who was involved in any of those things. Yeah, that's what should be being looked at. The outside people are just drones.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're the sheep, I guess, being led around. To an extent, that's how politics works, but it's going to keep happening. You can arrest 5,000 insurgents, but as long as the Republican Party is still, operative, you're going to keep running into these issues. I know some of them brought guns. There was also the guy with the pipe bombs who I don't think was ever found, who planted them at the DNC and RNC offices. But it's true, they didn't make the guns like the forefront thing, I think. Like, they didn't like siege the building in the way they could have. Probably because if they did, I feel like the Capitol Police would have had, no choice but to activate the secret, laser grid that cuts across the front lawn that would have just, bisected all of. I'm sure they have that,
Right, they just get electrocuted. They turn on the electric magnetic or whatever thing under the ground, and everybody just gets electrocuted outside.
Yeah, right. It just, the whole place, or maybe just the entire like acre around the Capitol building is just a trap door. They just press a button, they fall, they never hit a ground. This just forever. Just goodbye. They die of starvation.
We know the Capitol. We know that the people in Congress are connected to like the seventh circle of hell. So we know they probably have an easy access route right down into the center of the earth.
Open the hell portals. You guys use them all the time. I mean, it can't possibly cost that much. That's how frequently. I just
wanted to talk to you. I really appreciated your commentary on that Erin Lindsay thing.
You mean Lindsay Ellis?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, it's all right. I saw that. I saw your tweet on that. I saw quite a few of your supporters were mad at the mention of my name, which happens from time to time.
Oh, I get hate for liking you. I don't really care. I still don't understand it. I really feel like Seinfeld in the episode where everybody thinks there's something wrong and he can't figure out what's wrong. Like why?
I don't understand it either. I think it might be a gray zone overlap. They recently put out an article saying I was like CIA or something. So
somebody says you're toxic. I'm like, you're like the nicest guy. Like I feel like I'm living in a bizarro universe. It's very strange to me.
It's internet discourse, and it's always one of those like, well, I heard from a guy, I heard from this guy's cousin's aunt's sister's nephew that he said this thing to this content creator who I once watched in 2017. It's always bullshit like that.
And things out of context. And nuance has absolutely no place anymore. There is no nuance anywhere.
I struggle with that. I think, I mean, the Lindsay Ellis situation, I think, is perfectly indicative of that, right? How familiar are you with, like, the specific details of her cancellation? Because it was wild.
I hate to say it, I'm not on social media.
Good.
So when you see me on Twitter, that's actually my business partner, Peter. He handles our social media. I got off about a year ago because, to be honest, they were just too mean.
Good.
And I don't need that in my headspace. And it's not that I care what they think of me. I really don't care what they think of me, but I just don't need that toxic crap in my mind.
No, I totally get that. I actually have my own name blocked on Twitter. So I don't see anything about myself, and I can keep it where I like it, which is shit posting. But the Lindsay Ellis thing is really wild, okay? I'm not joking or exaggerating when I say this, okay? The Lindsay Ellis cancellation was spurred because she made a comparison between Raya the Last Dragon, that Pixar or Disney movie from a couple years ago, and Avatar the Last Airbender, a movie which the creators of Raya the Last Dragon specifically said they were inspired by, or a TV show they said they were inspired by. But because they're both like Asian inspired, people said she was saying all Asian media was the same. And then I think she did a follow-up post where she said, like, I guess if you squint at this, you can interpret racism if you want to. And then people said, oh, squinting. Oh, you're making fun of Chinese people now. Right. So it just this psychotic snowball. And now she's leaving the whole fucking internet. So, I mean, there you go.
And I didn't know of her really before this, but I don't if she was somebody that you would consider to be a net positive, then that's really unfortunate, And I hate that. And I hate that people have to be so mean. And that is absolutely something that say it to my face. See, if somebody would come up and be willing to say that to my face, which I don't think anybody has the guts to say most of the stuff they say online to someone's face. That's part of the problem is people feel at liberty to just be as mean as possible because there's really no accountability for it.
Yeah, so I always make jokes because I get a lot of hate online. I always make jokes that if I'm going to any of these IRL conferences, that I'm going to show up just strapped. I'll be wearing like a trench coat that billows out to around shoulder width, and inside it's just like 7 Matrix armories worth of self-defense, But I've actually gone, and I went to a libertarian conference about 2 months ago, and everyone there is so goddamn nice. I get more hate from my fans than I do from my enemies IRL. So yeah, the internet really does encourage people to act at their worst.
Yeah, and I get hate. It's funny, but I always get hate for who I talk to or who I'm affiliated with. And I'm thinking, can we just focus on issues and policy? I don't have to, you don't even have to like everybody that you work with to get things done. Like sometimes you just build coalitions for a better purpose. And the problem, I think, and it's way worse with the left, is they get bogged down in these sort of purity details, and it really makes it difficult to get crap done. And we do our best to try to bridge that, and be like, I'm going to talk. My message is my message, regardless of who I'm talking with or whose show I go on. But it's very frustrating. And it is mostly from the left.
Oh, yeah. The right does not do this. The right will work with, like, anyone. Like, Nicki Minaj talked about her cousin's friend's balls or whatever, and now she's, like, the hero of the anti-vax right. They were flying flags with Nicki Minaj's ass on it. Like, they don't care. They'll take anything. No. But on the left, you're digging through tweets from 9 years ago going like, I don't know if that was okay even back then, this take on, on whether spanking is child abuse. Kicking people out. I think it's really frustrating, and I completely agree with you. It's like the conflation between a social and a political space, where social spaces, you can be as discerning as you want. I mean, if you don't like a person, fuck them, don't spend time with them. But, right, political spaces, however, we have to be a little bit more, strategic. You have to be able to build bridges with people you fucking hate in order for any of this to work.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is that all of the people that spew the hate about us doing that, they wouldn't be able to ever get anything done if they were in any position of power, because if you're going to be like that, you just can't get along with people enough. Like you will not survive in this world. I like to quote Tim Black on that. You will not survive this world.
Yeah. Can you imagine the revolution being led by this elite cabal of people who only were able to get things rolling after they purged anyone to the right of, like, Mao, and anyone who doesn't have a take on trans issues that's within the past 2 months of, like, immediate ideological legitimacy. They're like 15-year-olds, I guess. Yeah, a lot of them are kids on social media. That's their social group. It's hard to have a personality online because you're competing with every other person on Earth, basically. So one of the best ways to do it is you just be the best at your ideology. But going out and volunteering, going to soup kitchens, protesting, all that stuff, that's difficult. That's pretty difficult to do. It's way easier to just sit at home and be like the holier than thou. Yeah, and that's your social credit right there. But it's very destructive to them too. I don't think it makes them happy.
Yeah. I mean, what we do is we're always local. Like everything we do, like all the money that comes in for us goes to, I keep homeless packs in the car. All the things that we do with community garden donations, like all that stuff comes from whatever we get. Like, that's what we do. We're all about serving. And that's what matters to me. So if people want to hate me because of something they misinterpreted because they came already, most of these people decide they don't like you and then just work backwards from their conclusion. They just decide they don't like you for whatever reason. They've never met you, they just don't like you. And so you could find reasons to not like a lot of people, and that's just what they do. But I'm very comfortable with where I allocate priorities and resources and the kind of things that we support. I mean, we're very small, but we get groups of volunteers out to all food distributions and everywhere that we can. Which begs the question, why isn't your representative doing that? Why isn't my representative doing that? Why aren't they serving the community?
Yeah. I mean, well, you need a good example. People forget, people have forgotten just 100 years ago, bosses of, like, textile mills would fall asleep quaking because they knew that the union leaders were sharing around their address at the, at the factory the previous day. Police had to be given, like, special training equipment and warnings to prepare for upcoming miners' strikes. Back in the days when they were afraid. Now people don't. I don't even, like, it doesn't even register in people's minds. The concept of a strong union, or of, like, politicians who really answer to people. I think if you have no good examples of this, people's imaginations don't stretch that far. Our imaginations are only as wide as what we're told the realm of possibility is. And I think that's what a lot of people want, liberals especially. They want everyone to believe, they want a world in which there's no such thing as accountability, and there's no need for it either, because everything's going just fine and there's no need to worry about it. And worry-warts are troublemakers anyway, you know. Just this utterly technocratic nightmare world where there's no such thing as real, like, political engagement. And I think, I mean, we're kind of trying to undo that damage right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean, look, our motto is transforming politics into service. I mean, the whole idea is that your representatives are your employees and they're extremely insubordinate. And what I find interesting is in any other world, like in any other business, would you have employees that don't do their job, take money from people working against you to work against you, give themselves a raise, don't give you vacation time, like all these things. And it's like, what universe is that acceptable? And they make a lot of money for this. It's not like they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. And it shouldn't be a career. It's meant to be a term of service. It's always meant to be a term of service. And these are things that fundamentally have to change, or nothing is going to change, because we need to get back to the process being a legitimate process and people having any sort of faith in the process. Like, there's no reason for people to want to vote, really. Not right now. You know that they're all bought and paid for. You're not given very many choices. Both parties are corporate. We don't have ranked choice voting. We live in a closed primary state. Like, there's so many impediments to having actual, real, thriving democracy. You know what I mean? And I think that's very discouraging. So we're kind of about reminding people there are people that are doing this that actually want to represent people.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, that's what we're about.
No, 100%. You know, it is true. You know, being a politician, there are always incentive structures that are going to corrupt this process. But, like, the ideal politician is an activist who joins because there's something that they really want to fix. The people like them enough to get them in there. And they treat, you know, their entire political term as a gauntlet. Just this incredibly difficult day-by-day struggle. You know, politicians, Shu just said this in chat, Shu on head, politicians should never be comfortable, ever. You know, if a person wants to be a lifelong politician, this should be a career choice as wise as being a lifetime football player or a lifetime trapeze artist. You know, if you want to, go for it, but that is not a safe or you know, stress-free role. The only happiness that I get from, like, reflecting on the presidencies of W and Obama is the before and after photos, because I do take great satisfaction from knowing that maybe they're ghouls who wrecked the country, but at least, you know, it did kill them to do it. At least that job is hard enough that it robs them of their life essence, like a lich is in the White House basement, you know.
Yeah.
That should be every political job all the time. They should quit after 2 years because they're exhausted. All right, that's the dream.
Right. I mean, well, and I would say as to especially Obama, yeah, he might have aged. Like, it's sort of like when you're a president, it's like dog years, I think, like the amount that you age, it's sort of like for every year, it's probably like 7 or whatever it is. But he's living quite nicely in his $14 million estate in, where is it, Martha's Vineyard. I'm thinking he's living pretty large for a war criminal, and W could be in that camp as well. So, you know, these are people that, I mean, the entire administration should have been prosecuted.
Well, don't worry. The vineyard was built right along the coast, right? Okay. 30 more years and Obama will drown. Okay. That'll be our justice. We just have to wait for the, you know, Florida goes first. Eventually it gets.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to higher ground as soon as I can. I'm a mountain girl stuck in a beach town. So I'm not going to be here when it actually is underwater, but it is happening. It's very, very apparent it's happening. I want to say that's very exciting to me that Shu on Head is in there. Big fan. Would love to chat.
Sure.
She's great.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, she is. And I think you two would get along. With regards to the, with the feeling it thing, I live in Seattle, and we actually got, We've been getting snow every winter, and apparently in Seattle, snow was supposed to be like a light dusting, you know, maybe. I mean, this, you know, like maybe, they're right on the fringe. But no, the past few years, it's been shutting down the city. Just like last year was a foot, you know, we got like 6 inches in a day. They have to like block off roads. They can't clear all the ice and everything. And then in the summers, it was 108 degrees in June time last year. So it's pretty soon. I mean, the human habitable zone is going to be start at Canada and just keep moving up from there. We're going to be living in the Yukon.
I'm actually that doesn't even I actually that doesn't even bother me. What concerns me here, especially in Florida, really is the drinking water scenario is going to start to get really dire, and they keep building and developing and putting up condos, and I'm thinking, where are they going to get the drinking water? That's going to be a serious problem, not just along the coast, but everywhere. But Seattle is supposed to be, I think that's considered tropical climate in some way, because my mother-in-law is in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And if you look at a picture of like the zones, like the climate zones, it does this funky shape around the country, around the coastlines. And I think that, don't you guys have palm trees?
No, that's further down south, but it
Okay.
is. I think it is a rainforest.
That's
Yeah, along the west coast at Northern California and up. I did college in Humboldt, and they have I mean, the humidity would tell you. I mean, you go out there and you can't see more than 100 yards in any direction because the air is thick with it, and you hear, all the bugs, and all the trees are covered in vines and moss and crap. It's a rainforest. It's really beautiful over there.
So it isn't supposed to be that cold there, I mean, it is concerning. We're seeing it. Have you seen Don't Look Up on Netflix? Have you seen it yet?
No, but my chat keeps mentioning it to me, so I feel like I'm piecing together the story.
It came out of the brain of David Sirota, and he had this idea for it, and he's friends with Adam McKay, who's the director of that, and he told him about this idea, and the next thing you know, he was just like, hey, come out, we're going to make this movie. But we actually had David on a few weeks ago to talk about it, and he said the experience was amazing. But that was sort of like a project of love, in terms of the cast that did that movie. But it's so important, and everyone's ignoring it. And when you see it, you'll really see who the characters. You'll see they're based on, like, there's this one that's some sort of merger between Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. He's the oligarch character, or whatever you would call him. And you'll see
a fan favorite,
But no one was really big on him, no. But yeah, and it's really very true. Like, the people are screaming at the top of their lungs, this is happening. And yet the oligarchs don't care, because there's still money to be siphoned. So even though we're going to be running out of drinking water, we could still get another few condos up and get some money out of it, and screw the people that'll have nothing to show for it, because no one will buy it. At some point, there will be a last buyer.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about libertarianism and brain damage, and I feel like this perfectly explains this issue, because in the minds of people like Musk or Bezos or whatever, I don't think they think there's a relationship between sort of like systemic problems and systemic change. I think they look at climate change and they think, can I as an individual single-handedly solve this problem? To which the answer is, of course, no. And the next thought they have is, okay, whatever. Like, and that's it. The idea of contributing to something greater. So, like, they barely talk about this. Musk wants to go be Mars emperor, as though terraforming an entire fucking planet and shielding it from cosmic radiation would be easier than reducing climate emissions on Earth. He just had a third of his goddamn Tesla cars, ever recalled. Bezos, and they're all off in the Nevada building bunkers 200 feet under the ground, and, filling reservoirs that can, slate their thirst for the next 100 years or whatever. And it's infuriating, like, all the power in the world, more powerful than any medieval king. And they get to, and that gives them the ability to build the nicest bunker, like, that's it. That's all we get.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem when people, and it is a libertarian thing. And it's funny, because on, like, civil issues, I'm sort of like a libertarian socialist. Like, I'm not I'm very live and let live. Honestly, anything consenting adults wants to do, have at it. I don't care. But the problem is they don't see the value in the collective. And the problem is that we live in a collective, whether they like it or not. And we are only going to be as good as, like, the least, as the least among us. Like, it's sort of, and COVID is this great example, because I don't care how wealthy you are. If people aren't healthy, you're susceptible too. Like, you cannot protect yourself when you live in a collective, and they just don't get that. So you can build a bunker, But eventually, you really need to see this movie because the end is perfect for this.
No,
But
no,
like
I have to. Otherwise, I'll get
you
lynched by my community. You know, I
but
need
like
to.
you really can't escape it. And I don't care how big your bunker is or how big your moat is or whatever you do. And money isn't going to solve it. And the best we could do is try to take care of the people that are here now and make life as good as it can be for as long as it can be. And they are incapable of recognizing the collective. I think to some extent we're talking about psychopathic people in a lot of these cases. These are not normal people.
Oh, I don't disagree at all. No, there's definitely some kind of chemical imbalance going on up there because the idea of sitting on 200 billion and not waking up and going, I'm going to solve homelessness is just it's insane. Like that has to be some kind of mental deficiency. I can't fathom, a working I understand this is all abstracted through like stock evaluations and stuff, but this would like it's like they're pedaling a cart through a desert full of people dying of dehydration, and the cart contains 8 trillion gallons of water. They will drink in their lifetime an infinitesimally small portion, and they just keep wheeling it. There's not even a thing at the end of the road for the water. They're just keep moving forward. And with regards to like, this whole collectivism thing, I do agree. I think that when I think of collectivism in like the dirty sense, because it's always used as an insult, I think of religion, nationalism, these things that kind of suppress individual identity sometimes.
That's not what I'm talking
No,
about.
exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the good shit, is individual freedoms are best secured through collective action, like a union. Unions act collectively, so the individual paycheck is fatter. I mean, it works out. You see this with a ton of systems. We obviously work as groups, not just as islands, So I guess, but when you're wealthy enough, I guess we just kind of socially ignore that. Like we just think, once you reach a certain point, you no longer have the idea of a good citizen is just something we don't have much of anymore.
Yeah.
Even back in the old like 500 years ago or whatever, in your medieval villages where half of the people were illiterate, the idea of like a good citizen, maybe not citizen, but like a good person, a person who contributed to the village, who helped out. Like this was like a valued concept, It was all they had. But now it's all grind set, Nobody knows their neighbor. Nobody knows anyone on their street or on their block, and nobody cares, and nobody does anything or donates or, we have garage sales. That's it. Apart from that, though, the idea of a person who's like a pillar of the community, this is like a special thing now.
Yeah, it's funny because I this is where I feel like I'm like a socialist libertarian. I would be very content living with my dog in the woods and not being around people. I really would. Like I'd be very content. However, I'm perfectly comfortable and happy with the idea of contributing for everyone's collective good. I just personally am kind of like, my husband says I'm like the Unabomber, but like I just personally am not like into living that, but I want to help everybody. So like I believe in a social safety net. I believe that we need to help the least of these. And that to me is the fundamental question. When I look at people in terms of their philosophy, it's like, do you feel a responsibility, the collective responsibility for the least of these? And if you do, then you're someone that I can probably work with to get some things done. And if you don't, then probably we can't. And the way you do it is often very easily debatable. But are we all trying to help people? And I think the reason we don't is people are generally just very malcontent. They're very unhappy. They're very malcontent. And when somebody is content and secure in their life, they're not about hurting other people. They're not about hoarding. They're not about that. Like if you're good with yourself and you're a content person, you're not bitter and sort of like begrudging other people. The world is not a pie. Like if someone gets a piece, that doesn't mean your piece is smaller. And I think that mentality comes out of just malcontent and unhappy people. And that's unfortunate because it's like if somebody's doing well, that's good. Like I want everybody to be healthy and as educated as they want. And how is that not a good thing? And the fact that there's people that actively work against those things is very bizarre to me. And so I can only really attribute that to you must be a very unhappy, malcontent person.
Yeah, I get. I get. A lot of people, I think they hoard and they keep to themselves because everyone knows, at least here in the States, that you're one medical emergency away from homelessness and bankruptcy in some cases.
Mhm.
So there's that constant terror, I mean, there are people can be bankrupted by this stuff when they're making like low six figures. I mean, even if you're in the top 10, 5%, you're still potentially a small, a couple of bad days away from everything being gone. I get that desperation for yourself, but when you're so hateful towards other people's,
Right.
perceived success, when you're that competitive about it, I think a lot of it really stems from the conservative mindset that people should only get what they deserve. And what they deserve is this really kind of nebulous idea that just happens to line up perfectly with your biases. So, when inner city black people are making too much, they're welfare queens, but, business owners taking subsidies, that's all above board, baby. That's a-okay, when people a lot of it also, it's the hate of liberal arts, I think, stems a lot from that. The idea of like an artist or like a graphic designer or like a writer making a decent amount of money is kind of considered like decadent, I think, or like indulgent. But if an engineer, an electrician, a plumber, they make a lot of money, it's like, okay, natural. But in reality, like, what we deserve very rarely maps onto how much we actually make. In fact, there's almost no relationship. I don't think Elon Musk deserves what is he worth? A trillion? I don't know. Um,
Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves anything. Like that's the thing. It's like, it's a matter of we're all sort of in this together, and why not just be kind and not be hateful and want to help people? Like it's so strange. Like somebody else doing well doesn't mean I can't do well. Doesn't mean that it's not like him or me. Like I just it shouldn't be that way. And we definitely, that's very like a very Western imperialist, pull yourself up from your bootstraps kind of mentality. And I don't subscribe.
and the mentality completely breaks down as well when you think about, the welfare queen narrative
Yeah.
versus a multi-billionaire, because these people, they never have a problem with the ultra 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 wealthy, but if there is some proportional amount of deserved reward between like Elon Musk and some single mom in Philadelphia, there is no possible justification. There is absolutely nothing. The single mom from Philadelphia could have lifted a pinky finger one time in a decade, and it would reward more equivalent, wealth than whatever they think Elon Musk did to deserve the 250 billion. It's very out of whack, and everyone thinks they're going to be the next Elon or whatever, but
They
uh
don't realize that those people, yes, they came up with an idea. Maybe they had seed money to start. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they had some family money. Maybe they didn't. But the reality is they could not possibly have gotten that wealthy without screwing their workers, the environment, and not properly paying taxes. And by properly paying taxes, I don't necessarily mean evading or being illegal, but by purchasing a system and buying politicians that create tax systems that make it so that you don't even pay taxes at all. And it's perfectly legitimate. And people don't have a problem with that. I would argue if you would show me a billionaire that was able to logistically and legitimately get to that status without screwing the environment, all those things, then I would say, sure, if you're properly paying your employees and your employees can have paid sick leave and they're making a living wage and everybody is treated kindly and you want to have a gold-plated fixtures on your jet, then you should have at it. But that doesn't exist because those people can only exist because of the suffering of all these other people.
very very golden goose. Yeah, outside like alien contact just handing them off 8,000 tons of solid gold. Probably not going to find that ethical billionaire anytime soon. It's really about the systems that lead to it, right? I mean, so
Yes.
much of what, because for instance, we celebrate the ultra wealthy today, but for some reason we don't celebrate the ultra wealthy of yesteryear prior to capitalism, like Mansa Musa, or the old like religious leaders who would grow fat in golden cathedrals and just, but like we don't talk about them now like that because the system through which you legitimize this wealth accumulation. You know, we talk about like capitalism's the only way to do that. But if you think that Elon Musk deserves $250 billion by, you know, taking advantage of subsidies and engaging in, you know, venture, you know, capital acquisition of a couple companies, then have engineers do work for him, then why the hell? Then how is it not legitimate to make billions from owning an empire, or for being the head of a church, from being a pontiff? You know, it's very arbitrary. In a way, the right to become obscenely wealthy at the expense of others is kind of the same no matter what system you're doing it through. We just have right now like the biggest happy face sticker slapped right on top of it, you know. That's why they're so obsessed with, you know, like voluntarism. Like, oh, this is very voluntary, right? People definitely like choosing to work for $8.50 an hour at the
let them go
Walmart.
get a better job. Let them go get a better job. Let them just move and get a better job. Why don't they, you know, why don't they just do this and that? And yeah, like it's just interesting to me because people really have no empathy and no understanding of really how this works. And like, I was born, and you've said this before too, I was born into a privileged world. I was born to parents who wanted me. I never wanted for anything. My life was good. I had education offered to me. I never had to really worry about anything, healthcare, none of that. Like it was all good. But that's not most people. And for people to just be so obtuse about that and not recognize that we're not in charge of our circumstances. We're just not. We're lucky where we're born. And then we have choices we can make based on the opportunities that we're given based on our circumstances. So it's fascinating that people say things like that and they just have no clue.
Also, it's just an individual freedom thing, you know? Why is it that this obsession with choice making is so big in every respect apart from economic freedom? Oh, you have 18 trillion types of soda and energy drink at the store. How many types of cheese can you buy for just $5? Oh, freedom, choices, right? Well, how many choices do you have for a job? None. For most people, it's essentially none. You have meaningless decisions that you can make between a number of service jobs, which all pay the same and suck and have commutes that are kind of in varyingly acceptable to unacceptable range. But that's it, you know. We recognize in other instances that real freedom isn't freedom from rules, but rather the freedom to choose, to make affirmative choices, to enact our will, you know, and they have to be meaningful too. 20,000 different $8.50 an hour service jobs is as meaningful as 20,000 different brands of the same cheddar cheese. Meaningful decisions, meaningful choices, but we all forget about that when it comes to economic freedom. Then all of a sudden it's, well, why don't you just, what would the analogy be? Go make your own cheese? I don't know. They don't say that for other things.
Right. Yeah, I think it's frustrating, and it's definitely been like this almost over so many decades of this manufactured consent in a way. Like we're like battered spouses. We don't know that things are so much better in other places. And then our talking points about that are so manufactured as well. I was recently at a baby shower for a friend, and she has a very good friend who lives in Finland. And the girl came over here for the baby shower. And she's also on year 3 of paid leave, by the way, paid family leave from in Finland. You get that on year 3. And she brings over this box that everybody in Finland, when you have a baby, gets this box. It is a box that contains everything your baby needs for the first year of life. And the box itself is like a crib thing. Like it could be like a little bassinet, right? Like everybody gets the box. Mm-hmm. And they're happy with this. And what people here will say, well, they pay so much in taxes there. Yeah, they do. They do pay a lot in taxes there, but yet they treat each other with this certain level of like, they have a basic standard of living that they all tend to agree they're entitled to. And that is what we don't have here. We actually do believe that some people are more entitled than others. And it's usually based on very insignificant things. Like the people that are famous for being rich or rich for being famous, but they've not actually ever contributed anything of substance to the universe.
Yeah. And again, it's really just a reification of what we've seen before, you know? If you want to see any work done in, you know, Bezos's enterprises, they have workers. Tens of thousands of them. And they have engineers and they have software gurus. And I'm sure there are a great many very intelligent people who work under Bezos. He just owns it. And likewise with Musk, he just owns it. He doesn't build the rockets or the cars, you know. And
Right.
with the old kings and emperors, they don't guard the gates or plow the fields or, you know, husbandry the cows or whatever else. They just own it. But you know, all credit, all glory goes to them. Whereas here in America, I mean, we don't get any real paid leave. I think,
No.
well, I think here in America, they do send you a basket when your kid's born, and it's got like a bunch of Amazon training modules loaded on it. You know, like on an iPad that you're supposed to like show your baby, and then it's rent, of course. You send the iPad back. Yeah.
What you do get when you have a baby here, you do get like a packet, right? Like you get what is the size of like a small diaper bag that's kind of like a plasticky one, like not one that will last for any amount of time. And it's filled with marketing products, either for the hospital or for the baby formula that they want you to feed your baby instead of your breast milk. So you get a package, but it's a marketing thing. It's merchandise. It's not about what you need or your baby needs for their first year. We get it for a profit motive. Like the priority is totally different. They're marketing Enfamil and baby products, and other countries are actually trying to take care of the babies.
Yeah, I was being too optimistic. They send you the iPad module device, but it has ads between every module.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's just an hour of playtime, and half of that is advertisements for cigarettes, and you just show it to your baby. No, yeah, I mean that's it, right? And the pharmaceutical industry is just the same thing. You know, we have at Pfizer and Moderna and stuff, we have the smartest pharmaceutical wizards who probably among those who have ever lived. I mean, the people right now, like cranking out the vaccines for Pfizer, those people have to be like brain geniuses. They have to be some of the best. I have no hate towards them. And what is their life work being used for? Well, the pharmaceutical companies, they talk to the doctors and they're like, hey, you should give more people Oxycontin. You should not enough people are on fentanyl. You should really work on that, really push that. Scrape knee, hey, life's tough. This is cheap. Go for it. And right now, at least last time I checked, fentanyl is actually the biggest cause of death for men in the 18 to 45 age range. Greater than heart attacks, car accidents, murder,
Really?
COVID-19. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Did you see Dope Sick?
No, I did not.
Also highly recommend. It's on Hulu and it's Michael Keaton, but it's the story about the Purdue family and the Oxycontin and the Sackler family and the stuff that went down and how the Purdue, they specifically targeted poor mining communities to launch their product because they knew that they were dealing with poor people with chronic pain. And this is where the majority of the overdoses and epidemics have been, like in places like West Virginia, out of control, like Kentucky, West Virginia, and all these poor mining towns. But Dope Sick was an amazing story for anybody. I'm not related to it. I don't get anything from it. It was just really good. But yeah, the pharmaceutical industry, they lie to us all the time. Every day. They're lying now about the COVID vaccine. They're flat out lying in a lot of their stuff. We know it doesn't prevent transmission. We know it helps keep everything better for people and reduce hospitals. And we know that it has a benefit. I mean, it does, but they're still like pushing it and in a way that with misleading information.
Yeah, I can't. Well, I mean, at this point, them being explicit and truthful, at the face of it, would probably kind of be like swallowing nails, right? No, I don't know about their messaging specifically with regards to their stuff. It does kind of speak to the fact though that, I feel like very few people are looking at this whole situation right now and recognizing that the just utter untrustworthiness of the pharmaceutical industry was probably a pretty strong contributing factor to a lot of the disinfo that came out from this. It's just now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the Republicans probably would have made mountains out of molehills no matter what. But there are definitely exacerbating causes here. I don't know. And with all of this stuff, right? I mean, you get these documentaries, saying, "Well, hey, take 2 hours to learn about how everything bad that has ever happened was done by this literal Disney villain of a human being." I'm just waiting for the day all these documentarians end their little movies on Netflix with just like Google Maps image and like the address of a number of executives, just sort of flashing at the bottom. Because like, look, what do you do after watching a video like that? Like, yeah, I'm gonna vote so hard in 2022. Like, it's clearly, I feel like anytime you learn about some stuff the pharmaceutical industry has gotten up to, or any of these fucking industries, right? It's almost like an incomplete sentence, and the completion of that sentence violates YouTube TOS, but it's always the implied, follow through, right? Because
Yeah.
what other solution are people posing? If they ended their documentaries with "That's why we need to vote Democrat," they'd be laughed out of the room. Nobody would take them seriously.
Right. I'm just thankful that there, at least this information is getting out there. And I try to encourage as many people to be as aware as they can. But the pharmaceutical problem is massive. And unfortunately, our Congress, both sides of the aisle, take tons of money hand over fist from big pharma. And it's not a coincidence that we have the system that we have. And we probably would have been way better equipped to be dealing with COVID if we had universal health care in the first place. So it's like at this point, it's, of course, we know it costs us more to not have universal health care, but the COVID was going to happen regardless. Let's say there's nothing you can do. It's a virus. It's out there. It's going to spread. But the fact that our results and our mortality is so high from it is totally a testament to the fact that we're just all screwed up with healthcare in this country. But big pharma has very successfully purchased a very large amount of our Congress. And they get to get away with all sorts of stuff. Like why the people in the Sackler family are not in prison, I don't understand it. I don't understand why more of them, I mean, they're going after them in civil lawsuits and there's all this, money being awarded to people. But why I don't understand why people like that aren't in prison.
That would be very, very bad, I think, for either political party to begin seriously investigating the malfeasance of any of these massive multi-billion-dollar industries. It might be bad for their health too, depending on how seriously they take it. Yeah, I feel I gotta wonder. Probably also half the reason our COVID deaths are so high is probably because so many people have just they don't see doctors. The idea of like listening to or going to a doctor or getting a vaccine is completely alien to them because, in America, you go to the doctor's office either if you have money or if you're the rest of the population when something bad happened. But the idea of going there as part of just your lifelong, like going there the way you'd go to I don't know, a grocery store, just some standard thing you do in the process of staying alive. Because you shouldn't have to see a doctor once a year. You should be able to see a doctor every 3 months. That's just default stuff. What you have questions like? Why not? But
and vision and dental and hearing and it's amazing that none of those things in this country are considered part of our health.
yeah, no, the teeth are luxury bones. They don't come standard. You have to pay extra.
But you do know that there are so many health things, seriously, that are connected to the mouth and connected to our teeth. Like it's a huge connection between our health and our teeth.
What are
like
you?
it's
What are you,
not.
a goddamn socialist? You can mash up food with your gums. What are you talking about? You can just fake it. Whatever.
I would be a socialist. You know what? I don't like labels because I feel like it's not like a one size fits all. I support all sorts of different things, but I have no problem with certain amounts of capitalism. I really don't. I mean, I just don't see how it's working right now for us. Like in theory, non-essentials to me, I have no problem with that. Like if somebody wants to invent a widget that people don't need, but they just desperate like a spinner, a fidget spinner. If somebody wants to invent a fidget spinner and charge an ungodly amount of profit for fidget spinners, I don't care. But like it's essential collective services that should not be for profit. And so, I'm fine with certain things like that. And I certainly believe in workers being owning more of the means of their production, or at least in some instances having much more of that option.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make me a socialist?
No, well, I think so. I break socialism down into two fundamental categories: worker control and market abolition. And I think that I think you and I believe something similar, which is that first of all, worker control should be taken for granted. We want that no matter what.
Yeah.
And in terms of how we deal with our markets, you decommodify the essentials. so that, no one has to worry about them. And if there is a place for markets, it would be in luxury goods.
Right.
If there was ever a place where I would be okay with people, charging money for a product for profit, it would be in the production of Beyblades. If you want to go out there and be a Beyblade warrior, out there in Central Park, just ripping cords and battling the neighborhood kids, whatever. But as long as the food, the housing, whatever else,
Right.
if that's taken care of and it's all controlled by the working class, okay, well, that right there would be better than anything else we have on Earth. So that's already, very aspirational. I'm okay with.
Can that exist? Do you think you can have certain things that are, basically capitalist free for all, and have other things that are not? Can that coexist really?
I think you'd have
I'd
to
like to
have
think so.
pretty strict regulations, but I think that the coexistence really is determined by the extent to which those businesses are controlled by the working class, whether they're worker cooperatives or whether there's some kind of state subsidization going on. Because the big issue we have right now, I don't think it's just like the market system. It's the fact that the people who are in charge of how that market system is, oriented and how its products are distributed are just aliens to the average American. I mean, if you're in charge of the pharma industry, because the issue really isn't the pharma industry. And it's not the CEOs of the pharma industry either. It's the fact that there are CEOs of the pharma industries. You could replace them and they'd still have the same problem. The workers are fine. The workers aren't the issue. And the buildings that house them and the machines they use, those aren't the issues either. And that is the industry, after all. It seems to be this distinction between what some groups want and what some other groups want. The groups like, pharma CEOs who go off and lobby to Congress and, hey, don't look into the fentanyl thing. Thanks, goodbye. That's born not just of pharmaceutical business, but of an entirely separate set of personal interests. So I think if you got rid of the bourgeois, it'd be a lot easier to reconcile those contradictions.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the problem is, like, when you talk about like the people that work for pharmaceutical industry, the scientists, the researchers, the people that have actually put in the work, they're not living high off the hog. They're not.
No, they're not. Yeah.
Right. So the people that are making money are basically shareholders in these companies, and the tops, the CEOs, the COOs, all those people, and they're just siphoning the money. And what really should infuriate people is that we already paid for it on the front end for their research. Like, that is subsidized stuff. That comes from our tax dollars, their ability to do what they're doing. And then they put these restrictions on it that make it that none of us can get it for a reasonable price when they only have it because of our subsidies. Like, that's infuriating to me.
No, completely, absolutely, yeah. You could line up everyone like lowest to highest income, and really, I mean, and this is basically just a fact. The more money a person makes, the less likely it is that they actually fucking do anything. If you go down to the poorest people, they work for a living, assuming they're employed. And usually if they're not, there's a good reason why they're not. Injury, or they're retired, or they're a kid, and then the higher up you go, it's like, oh, you make $1.2 million a year. What do you do? And they're like, oh, I manage hedge fund acquisition. And you know what they really do is they fuck their secretary and they do cocaine. And like a couple times a week, they attend meetings and they throw a dart at a board, and somewhere off in the world, somebody else's life is either ruined or improved. They don't really do shit. They show up. They continue to wear a suit, which is admittedly more than what I do for my job. But apart from that, and then the higher up you go, and what does Bezos do? But didn't Musk tweet once, like, yeah, I work 18 hours a day, and he posted like a timeline breakdown. If they actually did, they would wear a GoPro for a day. I want to see them do that, okay? If Musk works 18 hours a day, then he takes 2 4-hour shits a day, and I'm being charitable with that, okay? What is he doing? Like, what do they do? They go to meetings. It's all flight time and secretary fucking. It's infuriating, but people lap this up. They're like, oh my God, our Elon Musk, our worker overlord. You're like Tony Stark,
Yeah, I can't stand the idolatry for these people. I find it disgusting. And I think that is part of the problem. And that has to do, I mean, we have that with celebrity culture in general in this country. Like, what we admire and what our values are really out of whack. like completely out of whack. It freaks me out. Like more people can name everybody in the Kardashian family than could name the Supreme Court justices. Like our priorities, what we care about is the problem. That's the problem. And I feel like it's this almost like vicious circle, because what we like is what we've set up with the social media and regular media. And now it's just like this constant of just fucked up priorities and amoral shit. Like that's what it feels like to me. Like it's like this whirlwind, and we're just trying to break that, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's, we care about what we're told to care about, which I have to deal with the consequences of, because most conservatives are obsessed with meaningless culture war issues. Remember critical race theory? Nobody talks about that anymore. Where to go? Dr. Seuss, Mixer, Potato Head, whatever. They get these talking points that they burn through because it's a distraction. The last thing anyone with any real power wants is people asking meaningful questions. Simple ones, too, The economy might be really complicated. And credit where credit's due, it totally is, okay?
Yeah.
But the nature of the economy, how complicated it is, has not made the question, why the fuck does my boss make 400 times as much as I do, any less salient. If anything, it is more salient than ever, I imagine back in the robber baron days, at least if you were fucking your secretary, 24 hours a day, it was more likely you'd get gonorrhea and die. Now, they don't even have to worry about that. So if anything, their jobs have gotten easier. The question has only gotten more salient.
And you know who we have to thank for that? Sadly, ironically, the pharmaceutical
industry. Fucking pharmaceutical industry.
Now all that VD is just easily taken care of.
God damn it. If only, somewhere out there back in 1926 or something, some pharma worker, some guy runs up to him. He's like, hey, they used it. Didn't you see the papers? That big fucking coal mine of Berenstein. He was going to die of syphilis. Now he's going to be fine. He's fucking like, God, and back then it probably cost like $4, which back then was the cost of a house, yeah. So what we're saying is we need to bring back lethal venereal diseases.
Well, I think, look, I am really about thinning the herd. And that's another thing with the COVID that people hate that I say it. But the thing is, like, we created this virus, and now anything that, has less traffic on the road, anything that, I live in a very overpopulated place. So the idea of thinning it is somewhat appealing, but it is to some extent, we are watching natural selection. For however you view that, that's what we're watching, whether or not, like, I believe we created this virus one way or another, and now we're dealing with it. And the best we could do is protect ourselves, and people who choose not to, and vulnerable people, it's unfortunate, but it is natural selection.
It's natural selection for Republicans, which I think right now is really what this country needs.
Well, that's the thing. But there are people that are getting thinned that are just vulnerable, right? Like that did get a vaccine or would have if they had the vaccine before they died. Like there are people that are dying that are just vulnerable. And then there's people that are dying that are chronically stupid. And those people, it's like, I'm just kind of, again, thin the herd.
Yeah, what we really need, okay, is highly lethal diseases that will only affect people who can't do, like, very basic woke shit, okay? So basically, there needs to be some kind of highly targeted disease that kills people who can't use they, them as singular pronouns. I don't know how you get this working exactly. It has something to do with prions, I guess, but and that way, and you could, and all you'd have to do is use it once, right? I mean, you can imagine all those Candace Owens types being like, I'd rather die than refer to a non-binary person. They're right up there. That somebody goes up on stage, they're like, hey, I'm they, them, and they're like sweating.
Well, they can't handle it.
They can't. Yeah, exactly. They're like, they're like, well, do I say it? Do I, and then of course they can. They die. I will say I did enjoy the lowered traffic back at the beginning of the pandemic. I think exactly. I think the real issue I think isn't overpopulation. It's just our shit fucking coastal cities. Because like if anyone deserves to believe in overpopulation in the Western world, it's anyone who lives in like London, Paris, San Francisco. If I lived in San Francisco, I wouldn't just be like a social Darwinist. I would be like a full-on like anti-natalist depopulationist or something. All right, I
Like
would.
forced sterilization kind of
Yeah,
situation.
oh yeah, I would be like, dumping like sterilizing chemicals into the water lines every day when I wake up. Um, but then I remember because I've driven around and like most of America is just empty space. So I guess what I'm saying is we need to take all of the people who died of COVID or will die of COVID, and we need to move them to Wyoming, and I
Well,
think
that
that'll
would
be
serve Dick
fine.
Cheney just fine. I think that Wyoming is very interesting. You say Wyoming. When I was running for Congress, I got donations from literally every single state in the union except Wyoming.
Then there we go. Those
And
people
so
aren't
I just
gonna
think that's
vote for you.
funny.
Keep the streak going. As well. There are 5 people in Wyoming, and only 2 of them are literate. So the odds weren't
This is
in
why
your
people
favor.
this is why people don't like you, because they cannot understand nuance, and they cannot understand like.
The
And I think
nuance of
that
fuck Wyoming. Exactly.
right. So no, and that will now be a clip that will be put out there, and like they'll be, I can't believe you went on Vaush. He hates Wyoming, and like that'll be like the new talking point.
Yeah, the Wyomingites are gonna come for me. They're all gonna roll up in their tractor. They're fucking 1942 refurbished jalopy with like wooden outposts that people ride on the sides of, and they're gonna truck their way down. I've got 6 months until they make it to the West Coast. So
You're safe, but I just think people, but what you're talking about is very legitimate. We talk about it all the time on the show. This is the thing of like centralized versus decentralized planning. And it is one of the things that all our blue elite coastal cities are suffering from infinitely more than the middle American red places. And there's this huge divide in so many ways in that. And we are going to be underwater, literally, like where I mean, I am heading for higher ground, but these coastal places are just crazy. There's just too many people. There's too many people and not enough infrastructure. And the infrastructure that there is not going to be able to accommodate it.
And the crazy thing is, like, we complain, but Bangladesh, I'm pretty sure, is like 4 times the density. It's like we're lucky relatively. I can't imagine putting up with that. But then, like, probably half their kids die or whatever with population density like that. I think the real issue is like there are so many cool things about living in gigantic cities. There's always something to do. There's always somebody new to meet, something new to see. But at the same time, you have to live in a giant city, which damn.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I'm going to be in a cabin in the woods. I'm telling you. Like,
no, go for it, please.
very, very happy. Like, I am very happy being not, near the, but I recognize that people really like things that a city has to offer. I do. Like, if I'm going to one, that's fun. Like, it's a fun trip and that would be fun. Like, I love to go to New York. That's way fun. I could never live there. Could never, ever, ever live there. Like, the thought of it makes me feel like it wouldn't. I panic about that idea as almost as much as I would panic about being like incarcerated. The idea of living in like a city, in a building, in a high rise, or in a walk up in the hallways and their interior hallways, and you've got, no. It just would not work.
I'm sorry. I'm a bug man, and I have been since birth. You can put me in a glass tube. Just put me in one of those vertical apartments where they just shove you in a little tube that's just about as wide as your shoulders, take you to the 32nd floor, and you can just stare down at the city. Bracing yourself against the walls until it's time to go
Are
to
you
work
in a
again.
condo? Are you in a condo?
No. I have a nice place. Thanks,
Oh,
my
no. Oh, there's lots
wonderful
of really
viewers.
nice condos.
Oh,
There's
I'm not.
really
I
nice
can't.
condos.
I can't live with a shared wall. My God, they'd hear me straight. They'd be very embarrassing.
That's my thing, is shared walls. And also walking out my front door, I have to be outside. Like, if I open my front door and there's a hallway or another door, I feel like I'm in some sort of like horror movie, like The Shining or something. Like, I can't. No, if I open the door, I have to see the outside.
The main issue is that, like, cities are the only places that are built for human interaction, and they're terrible at it. If you go out into the Midwest, and I've been to the Midwest, okay, do they have the city problems? No, but like you have gas stations and, automobile dealerships, and you have giant 8-lane roads and sidewalks that were poured back in the 60s that are more crack than they are concrete at this point, and they're unlivable. The issue is we need to return to tradition. You got to look at all those old villages up in Scandinavia, northern Germany. You'll have these towns with maybe 2 or 3 thousand people in them, but they're like a real community with a town hall, a city center, a square, and then you have like the bars and stuff. The place that I went to college at in Northern California, the city was called Arcata, right? And a lot of this was kind of artificially propped up with the money that the college students brought in. But the Arcata had an actual town square. It was a small town, but you could walk to its center, and there were always hippies dancing around because it's Northern California, and they had like a big statue and the fountains, the bars, and everything. And it was always bopping. Whether it was 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., people were always doing something there. But that is very atypical.
Also a college town, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we should have that everywhere. That should be default. Having a city square and a communal center should be as necessary to human life as like sewage mains or electricity being hooked up in a residential area. Like this is not negotiable.
Yeah.
This is just a default thing everywhere should have. And then people would stop moving to San Francisco.
I think we're eventually getting there. I do. I think that evolution is going to bring us to those kind of more small, sustainable communities because we're going to have to get to that point. Eventually, the reliance on fossil fuel and all that stuff is going to get to a point where it's untenable. I do think that, and it might not happen in my lifetime, but I think that what we're getting to, or what you're talking about, like smaller villages where everybody sort of has their role and everybody, it's not like a co-op, but kind of like it functions. It's a self-sustaining thing. And I think that's going to be
No, it can be a co-op. No, you were on a great road right there. Just have communes speckling across the,
I would be honestly, I would be fine with that. I just have to have personal space. Like, again, I'm all about the idea of collective living in sense of helping people. I just like personal space.
Yeah, I think given the way the future is looking, you're going to be able to get that personal space as long as you're okay being town sniper once in a while. You'll do it on shifts, and when the West Coast people maraud in as climate change deprives them of water, you'll have to defend your community.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll be in the mountains in North Carolina. Like that's my long-term goal, is to be in Asheville and or outside of there anyway. And I would be very content. Last summer, I spent a month in a camper on a cannabis farm outside of Asheville. And I was curious how I'd be living in a camper for a month, because that is sort of a long time to be not having a real bathroom and stuff. And I was totally good. Didn't miss much, was totally happy, content, didn't need anything. I was very easy with that life.
Well, I'm saving up for one of those 200-foot underground Nevada bunkers, so that'll be my road. Okay, you could do
a live stream fundraiser for it.
Yeah, exactly. Just $300,000 more. Just make sure you have a satellite phone. Okay, we'll share. We'll update each other 50 years from now when shit's going down. I'll be deep underground listening to people. Gunfire up on the surface. And you can be like laying bear traps in the woods around your. And tripwire.
Apocalyptic, but I do like it's inevitable. It's not going to last the way it is.
Yeah.
What we're doing is not tenable. Certainly not in the coastal cities. It's just not. I mean, we literally are having buildings falling into the ocean.
I'm training myself to learn how to do photosynthesis in case the worst happens.
We'll definitely have to talk after you see the movie, because I look.
Will it teach me to do photosynthesis? Is that what I have to?
No. But the whole post-apocalyptic thing. But I'm definitely curious. I'll be curious to see your clip when you'll inevitably talk about it and say, "I saw this," and what you thought.
Yeah, I'll have to. I'll watch it while playing Final Fantasy 14. Which I'm playing a ton of it now to get it out of the way so that I have
no idea what that is.
That's very good, and that makes you more ready to be a wasteland warrior than me. I'm getting it out of the way now, It's like buying up Funko Pops.
The stuff that you talk about, I don't understand. Like you have it's like the two worlds, and I totally get the one, and the other one, it's like a foreign language to me. Yeah, all the gaming stuff, I don't understand any of that.
It's politics, and then it's soy-faced Bugman behavior, which two lives, okay? Like a superhero and an alter ego. Except
you don't care if I smoke a bowl, right?
Both of them. Not at all. Well, actually, I was going to say that I'm going to have to wrap soon because there's a ton of other crap that I have to talk about. But no, there's no problem with smoking a bowl.
Okay.
Oh wait, I'm not even on Twitch anymore. Well, even if we were on Twitch, it wouldn't be an issue. But isn't Bugman anti-Semitic? If Bugman is anti-Semitic, I'm unaware. I thought it meant I thought Bugman meant like
Who's
a
Bugman?
like a city, like a city dwelling type, like a person who who's never like touched the grass or tasted
How
the
is that
outdoors.
anti-Semitic?
No, I think. Well, hold on. I'll just Google it. I don't. Well, that's a great question, chat.
What the hell does that have to do with Semites?
Let me see. Okay, well, I look at okay, wait, yeah, hold on. Rootless, lifeless metropolitan drones who have a permanent 1,000-yard stare due to an existence void of meaning other than waiting for the next iPhone. Oh, chat, it's you guys. Okay, there we go. We've determined it's not anti-Semitic.
Okay, because that doesn't. I mean, look, everybody gets called anti-Semitic at some point in politics. It's like if they want to cancel you, they'll just. I'm a self-loathing Jew. Like I get shit all the time for, well, oh yeah, if you're not 100% on the Israel train, you're going to get called anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I noticed that really early on.
Yeah.
With herself as well. Yeah, it's pretty wacky out there. It is a shame, I think, with a lot of the anti-Semitism discourse, because like in America at least, I think that basically nobody cares about the Jews unless they're trying to make a political point. It's always adjacent to something else. The left brings it up when they're using it to attack Nazis, and the right or liberals bring them up when they're using it to attack pro-Palestinian types. But very rarely is there an for itself affirmative, defense of, because Jewish people get a lot of hate crimes, more than any other group proportional.
Yes, there is legitimate anti-Semitism. That
like
is
a
legitimate thing.
Ton of it. Like yes. So yeah. I grew up in Beverly Hills, which is like all Jewish basically.
Yeah.
So there was no real the anti-Semitism there was Jewish people making fun of themselves, like sometimes they'd like pull out pennies and like roll it down the hallway, and people would like pretend to run after it, and they'd make like and they're all Jewish doing this, and I'm just like I'm what are they, goy? That's the term,
You're
right?
goy.
Yeah, I'm goy. I'm just standing there going like, yep, that sure is funny. That wow, your sense of comedy is on point. Yeah, so no real anti-Semitism there. But then, like, at least a lot of people in my community and my family too, because my dad grew up Catholic. In a ton of other communities, people fucking hate Jews just casually. Yeah. They'll just regular people, not crazy political democrats, will just be like, "Oh, he's fucking Jew." Like, what? It feels so antiquated to me,
Yeah, well, I grew up in North Miami Beach, which at the time was the second largest Jewish ghetto in the country outside of Brooklyn. So I grew up, for the most part, everyone was Jewish. Like where I grew, everyone was Jewish. I knew that wasn't the case. Like I was aware that that's not the norm. But no, there is legitimate anti-Semitism. I was a waitress in Indianapolis a long time ago, and I was the first Jew that some of those guys in the kitchen ever met. And they asked me if I had horns, because we had to wear these racing cap things. And so it's like, and they weren't being mean and they weren't being like hateful, but it's legitimate.
That's a fucking Borat joke. That's so out there that it's
happened to me. The guys from the kitchen at the Outback Steakhouse in Indianapolis where I worked, and now this was in '93. But yeah, they thought I had horns. Well, they asked. They asked, but no, there is real anti-Semitism, but it's not about the people that are speaking in favor of Palestinians. Like that. That's not it.
Yes, that is definitely true. That is definitely not where it comes from. I feel like it comes from a million places. Anti-Semitism just feels like it's the bottom of the well for like every bad thought. Every conspiratorial, racist, xenophobic, homophobic, nationalistic, whatever. It's just somewhere, if you go far enough down that road, it's Jews. So it doesn't matter if your thing is being racist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever, because if you go down that road far enough, it unites so many communities. There are crazy black people who are anti-Semitic. There are crazy gay people. It's like just for some reason, it's like the end of the road. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up, my dad always said to me, and this was something I'll never forget growing up. I don't remember what the instance was, but he's like, if somebody hates black people, I can guarantee you they don't like Jews either. And it was just like this, like it was this thought. We had a club, a social club, Bell Harbor, on the beach down in my beach. And while my parents were in high school, the sign outside was no kikes, no coons, no pets, in that order. And that was the sign outside in Bell Harbor in the club. It was the country, like the club on the water, and
Right, the club.
the
Yeah.
club, and so that was in my parents' lifetime. Like that's which to me is crazy.
Yeah. And I guess the thing is we never get the big out moment, right? Because if because like black issues come up all the time in America, so if a person's racist against black people, that comes up pretty often. It's often a known trait, but Jewish issues outside of Israel don't. So sometimes you just get fucking walloped with this, right? I mean, at least that's been my.
You don't even expect it. Someone you would never think it, and something comes out of their mouth, and you're like, huh.
Yeah, and it is a real, because we did look at the numbers, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, Jewish people, that 40% of logged hate crimes in America against Jewish people, who are like a fraction of the population. I mean, what, 1-2% maybe, if that. I don't even. Yeah, like a really small, but 40% proportionally, it's like relative to the population sizes per capita, you're like 20 times as likely to get hate crimed as a Jew than you are as a black person, or like 10 times as likely a Jew than a trans person. Like the math on this is insane. A ton of it is just spray painting synagogues. Not to say that's not shitty, doing, because they always do the bad, because the bad, yeah, it looks like a fucked up little pitchfork because they're stupid and they don't know how to do the goddamn shape. But and by the way, I did see one of those at a synagogue that was on Pico Boulevard in Beverly Hills back when I was growing up. They spray painted that on the side of one of the synagogues. I did see that. But a ton of it is also like much more direct stuff, and it never ever ever comes up outside of Israel discussion, and I can understand your frustration, because I imagine being anti-Zionist means that you're kind of afloat a little bit for like
it's hard. It's not it's it's a lonely Jewish place to be in certain communities, and there are plenty of progressive Jewish people that are in the camp with me. There are, and there's groups called Jewish Voices,
so to speak,
Bay Street, like there are, but when you live in a very centrist, old community, old school, it's not, there's not a lot of love for that thought process. The anti-Semitism also, I think, doesn't come up as much as the anti-Black and the racist stuff, is because I don't think that Jews are a vulnerable community. They're not a community that you would say in this country has suffered as a group as a result of systemic, institutionalized problems. Jews have done relatively well. They're not really a vulnerable group. And so I think, like, in this country, when I see systemic racism, it's just so much more readily visible based on the life circumstances.
Well, it's a different kind of historical baggage here in the States, right? Because it just seems like you go back hundreds of years, so many groups hate Jews. I mean, we wouldn't even take the refugees from Germany before the Holocaust started. We wouldn't even do that. But we didn't have like slavery for Jews, And then you look at like, well, average Jewish wealth or whatever, and well, yeah, they're doing a hell of a lot better than a lot of other oppressed minorities. But it's weird, like the dynamics on that are really strange. It feels like there's almost kind of like this Faustian bargain where there are a ton of things working in favor of Jewish people historically, mostly cultural, I think, because there is like a work ethic, I think, that definitely benefits them. And some people say, oh, maybe being forced into the banking industry 8 trillion years ago did this, that. I don't know how historically valid that through line is, but however that turned out, there are a lot of great Jewish comedians, and we can all be thankful for whatever historical trends led to that happening. But whatever Faustian bargain caused that to happen, also everyone just despises you. And I don't get it. It doesn't even come up, I've talked with enough racists who justify the things they believe, right? Well, why do you hate black people? It's like, oh, well, they commit crimes. What crimes do Jewish people commit? Like, not that that's a justification. I'm not legitimizing. I'm just saying,
but like, what's their issue?
Yeah, like what? It's like, well, I hate. It's like, well, why do you hate black people? I hate the rap music of the club. Well, what do Jewish people do?
They say they own the banks and they own the money, and they're trying. And then a lot of those people, though, believe in that whole kind of like, I don't know if it's that new world order, but that stuff. And like, ultimately the Jews are in charge of the world. And like it's weird. It's weird because I look at like the top billionaire people, and they're not Jews.
It's
They're
it's the
not even from this
socialism.
continent.
It's the socialism of fools. It is. It is like the what with the idiot man socialism. I mean, if you feel like there's some nefarious conspiracy of people ruling over your lives, you have a very easy answer, which is that it's the wealthy. That's very easy. Like that. Feel like the reality is really pushing you in that direction. But then obviously they're pulled away from that. It's like, oh, well, it must be Jews. And then they have to do some crazy fucking math to explain how everyone ever in power was Jewish, even when they're not. You ever see those Nazi charts? They'll be like, hey, look at this guy, he's Jewish. And they're like, how? Well, you see, his wife was the sister of a guy who converted to Judaism to marry his wife. But they run with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that, you know what? And I'm not saying jealousy, but Jews do generally have tended historically to stick together in a pretty good way in terms of helping and benefiting and working in the community. There's also huge emphasis on education. That's always been, I mean, like the whole concept of Judaism is studying Torah. Like, so the whole concept is studying. And that's just like, so I think that, I don't know. It just, that people don't like us.
Well, people, they say, Jewish people are so in-group oriented. They always stick together. It's like, well, shit. I mean, the past 4,000 years of their history, what the fuck was the alternative?
Well,
right. What else were they supposed to do?
Right. Well, this is the thing. A lot of people, like the Jews weren't in banking. Well, they weren't allowed to do other things. Like a lot of the things that Jews are known for are because that's what they were allowed to do, and were able to cultivate those businesses. So it's very interesting. I just think that people don't like that people have been able to be successful even though oppressed.
Yeah, the SS officer marching through the Polish ghetto, disapproving look in his face, hands in his hips. Why are they all? They're so in-group oriented. Why are they so exclusionary?
Yeah.
Looking at the 18 people to a tenement. Very a big question. One for the historians. Shit. Okay.
Let me promote my show, and then you could be rid of me.
Oh, promote it twice. I don't know what that'll do, but
all I see you is on a Zoom, so I don't see all this stuff going on YouTube. I feel like if I pull it up, somehow I'll have like a feedback situation.
They like you, don't worry.
No, I figure. I mean, how many times have I been called Karen?
No, not what I'm looking. Good, not good. Once. As far as I've seen, not once.
Yeah. So, guys, if you like my show is called Generational Change with a J. We're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. We also have a website, generationalchange.com. We generally do long form interviews. We do 2 live streams a week on Mondays and Wednesday evenings. And we have all sorts of cool guests. Like for a very small, unsung kind of little podcast, we had Oliver Stone on Veterans Day. We're really trying to put together really good content. We do talk politics and silliness, but we also cover really good issues. Last night, we had an environmental water scientist on that was talking about, we talk climate issues, we talk justice issues, and we do silly nonsense. So, yeah. And we need subscribers. So, check us out.
And also, she, through some kind of wizard magic, got me in a call with Nina Turner, which was definitely one for one to get me some pats on the back from my folks. So
okay, well then I'm going to piggyback on that, because our guest Monday night is none other than the Queen Nina. Is coming on Monday for an update with us, and I'm a big fan of hers. So I get excited every time. It never gets old, I tell you. It never gets old.
Dude, you have the best guests, man. I just get 14-year-olds off Twitter to tell me that I'm.
Did you saw we had
gay.
Chelsea Manning? Chelsea Manning saying happy birthday to me. That was the highlight of everything. And so we get some cool. Andrew Yang's been on the show. We have we get. Yeah, Marianne Williamson's a guest. We get good people. And I think it's because we're just about getting the money out. Our agenda is about representing what people want to do. And fortunately for me, the things I support, most people support. So it works out well. But we're just trying to make a difference, just trying to help people. And locally, all our money goes to helping at a local level. And we do donate to some non-corporate candidates.
I strongly recommend everyone watching go and check that out, because it's good and it's cool. I don't do much promo stuff. It's good. Go look. You can get mad at me if I'm wrong. I really do appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast talking to you.
I
I
love talking to you, and I'm so appreciative. You are really like you're our largest benefactor to some extent because thanks to you coming on our show, that really helped our subscribers. I mean, it did, and you're very helpful that way. And I still do not understand how people have a problem with you. It's like
it's
fascinating.
you can have you if you I was gonna make a meme reference. There are conspiracy charts out there
I know
detailing.
what a meme is. I'm not that old.
No, well, okay, fine, all right. Listen, it's depending on who you go to. Either I killed Archduke Ferdinand. I sunk the Lusitania. I set fire to the Reichstag. There's a lot out there. Okay, only one of those three things is true. It's a lot of misinformation.
All right. Well, the next time we talk, we'll play that game. We'll play that game. Like you have to say three things, but only only one isn't true or whatever. And I'll have to guess that because
Oh,
I find you
Jesus.
fascinating and you're so young. Like I find it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, getting there. Valentine's Day comes around. I'll be 28. Living up my 20s while I can. I feel like 30s are going to be even worse. Not for me. I mean, the whole world wise. I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much better it's going to get. Not for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on the chat. I love watching you and I love watching you, just sometimes it's just hilarious and people like just cannot get out of their own way. And watching you react to some of that is just great. I very much appreciate you.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual.
Thanks, Vaush.
Oh wait, one last thing actually,
Yeah.
because it's too funny not to share. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know if you've seen it because I guess it was on Twitter, but there's this video going around. There was a cop in a patrol car. Somebody took a video through the window. They were watching me. They had an iPad and they were watching a video of mine.
Awesome.
And now people are memeing over that. I actually don't have a problem with people on the left going into the police force. If shit ever goes down, I think it'd be better to have some sympathetic types in there than not.
Yeah, well, that's like a good friend of mine who worked for the public defender's office and ran for public defender when she didn't win. She didn't want to work for the guy who was like totally horrible running against her. And she ended up, now she's working for the state attorney's office.
Oh.
And she thought she would hate that. But the reality is to have somebody with her mindset there, it's like she's able to dismiss things and get rid of things and handle justice before it even gets to her, like before it even gets to needing a public defender. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Systemic problems have to be fixed systemically, but it doesn't hurt to have good people in there in the meantime.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thanks, Vaush. Bye.
Take care.